First of all, thank the witnesses. I want to concur with Deputy Keogh that I think we need to go back to last night's programme. I'm not going down there at that road at the moment. First of all, let me go back to the previous questions that Paul or Deputy Keogh was on in relation to authorised officers. First of all, am I correct in saying that the department handled all this years ago and there was a change in that it was basically put out to HRI? Is that correct?
Well, IHRB is
IHRB,
yeah.
Sorry.
So IHRB will say enforce the rules of racing, and they weren't authorised officers until recently. That recommendation arose from, I understand it's an anti-doping report back in 2016, I believe, and one of the recommendations there was that the IHRB staff would have the powers to search and seize, basically.
Are they are they direct employees of IHRB?
Yes.
They are.
Well, that's my understanding. Yes.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, I would query authorised officers. I'd have seen them with the national parks and all the different state IFI and all that, and yeah, that's correct to be right. But the IHRB aren't basically the same person or the same liaison with the state as the Department of Agriculture are. And second of all, when they go to a place, have they a warrant going to that place with them in their pocket straight away, or do they have to go if they're refused access for a warrant?
No, if they have, basically now, an authorised officer has the power of entry onto a premises.
Not correct, not correct.
Onto a premises.
There is legislation. There is legislation, and I've gone through this fairly well now before on a different thing in Boggs. And yes, if they're refused entry, they can get a warrant from a judge. Am I correct in that?
Yes, if you're refused, correct. Yes, but they have powers of entry, we'll say, and it is an offence to prohibit them from entering. So there's an offence in the legislation on the vet meds around obstruction of an authorised officer. So somebody refusing entry would be putting themselves in the position where they could be charged with obstruction.
Can they go, not the department, but the other authorised officers, can they go and get a warrant, or is it a Department of Agriculture official that has to get it?
No, an authorised officer in IHRB has exactly the same powers as an authorised officer in the department. So they're authorised under the legislation to use the powers. The warrant is a search warrant, I think you're referring to, is it? It's a warrant to enter a dwelling. Yeah, that's for entering a dwelling.
Well, no, it's actually entered in property, because I'd have seen it before in Boggs. Right, I'm going to move on because my time is very limited. Mr. Smith, several members spoke about taxpayers' money. The one thing I think we need to get into our head here is that everyone here supports the horse racing industry, but the one thing we don't want is bad, basically bad stuff going out about it, and it needs to be investigated. You stated earlier on that the HRI and HRI and all of them, they're basically runs the whole show. Is it not a case that ye wrote the legislation, that it's the Department of Agriculture that writes the legislation? Obviously they have and that it comes into us as TDs, and that at any stage, if ye want, in your department, ye can do a new SI, or that you can do new legislation to change the format of whatever we want?
That's a very open question, Deputy. What exactly is it that you want?
Well, what I'm saying to you, you stated earlier on, if we've concerns as TDs, or if you've concerns about, we'll say, the setup of these these groups, if you've concerns, or I have concerns about wages not being discussed and are out there, like, bear in mind that if a farmer gets 3,000 or 4,000 from the EU, or 10,000 or whatever they get, it's there for everyone to look at, no matter, regardless of what data protection is. And what I am saying is, isn't the opportunity there to change any legislation that's required to make if we think that it's not transparent, that you and your department, it's every department that writes the legislation for each minister, and that if the willingness is there in a minister and in that department, that you can say that 50% of the board or 70% of the board has to be of one sex or the other. You can state that the wages have to be transparent. You can put in whatever preconditions you want through legislation if it's taxpayers' money that's going in. Am I correct in that?
No, I don't believe you're correct on either. First, if we dictate what the makeup of the board is, we will fundamentally take away the independence of the HRB. Now, if that's the decision of government to change the policy with regard to HRB, fine. But we would not unilaterally do that. They are independent and it's guaranteed. The second, the disclosure of the remuneration of people. It's a wider issue than the Department of Agriculture and their state-sponsored bodies. If we're going to change the law, we'd have to change it for all departments.
Yeah, but we can change it. It's legislation.
Correct. You are correct at that point.
Okay, well, so that's open to all TDs to discuss now. If they want to change that, they can bring a bill in or whatever. Is that fair to say?
That is correct, but you'd be changing it for all departments and all state bodies.
That's okay. To Mr. Sheehan, and look, I have to compliment, and he spoke about the 50 years in the AIM system that's there in the line of cattle. If I build something and it takes me 50 years to build it, well, if I'm moving it on to something else, it's only a matter, it's not that complicated to move it on. Why haven't we, with the whole horse industry, brought in a chip, a DNA, and an AIM system, and there's a card basically set up for each horse? If a farmer wants to move a calf, they can do it, or a wainling or a bullock or whatever, you can do it. In a matter, you can go online and you can do it in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes, no big deal. If it goes to, be it any of the shows or if it goes to a mart, the mart will do it automatically. If an animal is exported, it basically tells them straight out, so you can write them off. If an animal dies and goes to an ackery, the same system. What are we at in the line of, you talked about, well, the EU wants this and the EU wants that, in the line of that we're sort of doing what the EU wants. Why isn't Ireland, for an industry that's so important, leading the way ahead of everyone else? You talked about Hong Kong, but you mentioned the UK and you mentioned France and other places. When we have probably one of the best systems brought in in the cattle system, why aren't we leading the way? And will we lead the way, is the question I'm asking you, in the next 6 months, because of the controversies and the dangers that's involved with the talk at the moment about all of this. There was a program last night, I didn't see it, but that program, the investigative side of it, the doping side of it, all the different angles. Why aren't we, European leaders, forget about EU legislation, to make sure that Ireland is out there in front and looks and has the transparency? And that system is on our right hand because we have it done. And fair play to you, over the years, it is one of the best ever that has been seen. And if an animal, you talked about horses going outside racing or whatever, it's very easy to prove something if someone goes to a site. But at the moment, it has been admitted that when they go out to, when Miss, what do you call her, Miss, she's the veterinary girl, when they go out to a site,
Hilliard.
When they go out to a site, they don't know for definite how many horses on that. Now, you tell me that you can go to any farm around the country and you have a list of everything that they have in cattle, calves, sheep, whatever, you can get it there. But you haven't in an industry that's being questioned at the moment. Wouldn't the first move by a department be to say, well, within 6 months, we're going to have this foolproof system in and we will be able to say where every horse is. And to be quite frank about it, over a 6-month period, you talked about other types of horses. If everyone is told, everyone has an equine number if you have a horse, right? At least, or you have a herd number, but equine number generally. If everyone is told that they have 6 months to regularise that animal, or if they're got with no chip in them, or you have them declared for them, and get it up and running, wouldn't it be a massive step to put Ireland to the fore, first of all, to cut out a lot of this stuff that's going on sort of under the breath about what's going on in Irish horse racing now? Well, sure, we hear it day in day out. Our sure horses can go out the back door when the boys come to the front door or the girls come to the front door. So there's an onus on the department to lead the way in this, and it's not that we have 2 million cattle or horses born every year like we have cattle born, and we're able to fly through the cattle situation. And I am asking you, will ye give a commitment that within the next 6 months that this system will change, that will be foolproof, that you'll have a DNA sample? Because my understanding, registering horses at the moment is pretty expensive. I know what DNAs cost, but that we'll have a DNA sample, we'll have a chip in them, and that we'll have the card like the AIM system that is a foolproof system. Can you give us that commitment here today to, for once and for all, tidy up this whole horse industry?
Mr. Smith?
Yeah. Well, I might answer that, Chairman, if that's okay, or answer most of it anyway. So, Deputy Fitzmaurice, I don't disagree with most of what you said there. I suppose it's probably important to say that it won't be a huge, an awful lot of the building blocks are already in place. You talked about DNA sampling. I mean, that's already part of the process, which, when you're registering on a stud book, as you well know, the microchip is already part of the system. Yeah. The passport, or now smart card in the case of Weatherby's, is part of the system. We already do have a central database. As I say, it is part of our AIM system. It's not as sophisticated as the cattle one, but it is there. So an awful lot of the building blocks are already there. So it wouldn't be, as you say, or as I said earlier, it took us a long time to get to where we are with cattle, but we've gradually improved it. In fairness to the horse sector, it has come a long way in a fairly short space of time as well. And I say a lot of the building blocks are there, but that final step, that the movement thing, is the one step that's missing. As you see on the cattle side, when your calf moves to the mart, that's recorded on electronically. When it moves to another farm, it's recorded. That's the one piece that is missing on the horse sector, the movement side. The other parts of the system are in place. So it's not going to take an awful lot to move it on to have it something like what we have in the cattle side.
But what I'm asking you, and Michael, and I know that you have a lot of work done, and as I've praised the cattle system, what I'm asking you is, there is a fair big cloud between comments that has been passed in media about the whole, and then you have this programme last night, which I hope we look at later on. And what I am saying is, for the sake of an industry that's pretty big in this country, can we not give a commitment be the leaders in Europe? We were the leaders at stopping people smoking within the pub, right? So can we not be the leaders in this? That we will go down this road within the next 6 months and say that there's an amnesty or whatever you want for the next 6 months. And after that, then it's hi-ho, whatever horse you go near, that the department or whatever authorised officer, that there's a backup for everything belonging to that horse in this country. Can we not give that commitment here today?
Yeah, well, as I said, one of the final pieces in that jigsaw is, the census, as I mentioned earlier, that we're proposing to do, or we will do, before the end of the year. So I think that'll be maybe the final step on the journey. And where I can't personally give a commitment, but I'd say there's no doubt with the mood of this committee, and I suppose just the bit of soul searching that the industry will be doing. There's a lot of support in the industry for moving to a better traceability system. So I think we'll be pushing an open door, to be honest, and I think many in the industry would have been calling for this.
Could you explain? I just kind of fathomed this word census, and I heard you saying it earlier on. If we say that we're going down a road that we're going to have DNA chipped and a card basically registered online, and you have your number that you can pop into your iPad and you can either do a movement or whatever, that whole system set up, right? And you have that basically together there. what are we doing censuses for? Why don't we just say the 6 months or there's 8 months, even if it's 8 months, and we say there's a window of opportunity here, we want everything registered, and then after that, that's got, it's hi-ho to it, it's going to an ECRA.
Yeah. As I said, I don't think the problem so much is that horses aren't registered. I mean, we talked earlier about what percentage of horses are not microchipped or whatever. I mean, that's not the problem. Certainly, in the thoroughbred sector, there's no question that they're not all registered and microchipped and passported and all the rest. What's missing is the movement system. You know, it's the fact that when they move from farm to farm or whatever, while there's an onus on the trainer or the farmer or whatever to keep a record, there isn't an electronic record of it kept. So that's where the system falls down. So there are plans to try and address that, you know, though I can't personally give you a commitment that's going to happen within 6 months, but I think that's the journey we're on. There's no question. That's where we're moving towards having a similar system on horses to what we have in cattle. I think that's where everyone wants to get to. How quickly we'll get there remains to be seen. But I'd say there's quite a mood for that sort of a thing at this stage, I would think.
Well, would Mr. Smith give us a commitment that they will drive that on within the next 6 to 8 months? And my last question, Michael, is on the sports horses. And my understanding is now I understand that the department is sorting at the moment, but over the last number of years, if you had a horse and you brought it to the stallion, seemingly there was a body appointed for this book that you get, and they were sending it out to the guy that owned the stallion. Why would that be? Why would that be allowed? And into the person that owns the foal that should get the book. And the department, my understanding, is aware of it, sorting it at the moment. Isn't that an unusual situation?
Yeah. From what I know of this, certainly in the past, I think it would have been not uncommon for the passport to be sent out to the stallion owner, and I'm only guessing that it was probably to do with there was a sense at one stage if whoever owned the book, the passport, owned the horse or had some hold over the horse. So I can only guess that some years ago that was the practice in relation to getting paid for your covering fee or something like that. But to the best of my knowledge, that doesn't happen now. So the system now, the legal system, is that it's the keeper of the horse that has to get the passport. So I'm aware we had one complaint, earlier in the year, one single complaint in relation to a case where it was alleged that the passport wasn't sent to the keeper, and I think we looked at that, and I don't think there was anything in it. But if you're aware of cases where that's happening, that the passport isn't being sent to the keeper, that's certainly something we can look at. But to the best of my knowledge, that doesn't happen now. You know, the passport issuing bodies are clear that the person that they have to send it to is the keeper of the horse.
Is there a direction sent in the last 6 months to the passport issuing bodies that you'd have approved or whatever to make sure and send it to the keeper? Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's been a direction sent in the last 6 months, but in the one case where we were asked about and we checked it out, it wasn't the case that So the only case that I'm aware of where the passport is sent, other than to the keeper, is where the owner of the horse has specifically written to the passport body and said and given them permission to send it somewhere else. So in a limited number of cases, if they get something in writing. But other than that, I'm not aware of cases. But if there's a particular case you're aware of, we can certainly look at it. But it's supposed to go to the keeper. That's what's supposed to happen.
And for thanks, Michael. And in fairness, on the cattle side of it and all of that, the veterinary side of it is very good. I must compliment you. But Mr. Smith, in the line of what I've said already about the traceability of these horses, are you prepared to drive this on with the rest of your team to make sure that this is delivered fairly rapid in the next 6 to 8 months? Because my understanding is, and everything I've researched on it and talking to people, that basically we have the model there, we have the whole lot there. It's all we have to do is sort of move it across the table and get up and running with it for the horses side of it, for the traceability, but also for all the other advantages like we have in the cattle.
Deputy Fitzmaurice, I don't mean to give a cop-out of an answer, and I've tried to be as candid with my answers as I can today. I'm not responsible for the ID area ID and welfare are not my area of expertise, so I can't give you such an assurance.
Okay.
And who is responsible? Is it the minister?
Oh,
I know
no, there
Michael-
is an assistant secretary in charge of that area, and obviously Michael.
Well, Chairman, can we write that as
Look,
assistant
Michael,
secretary?
we'll be having a private meeting in the morning and to discuss the outcome of these 3 meetings, and we'll be making various recommendations. And I'm sure traceability in the horse industry will be definitely one of them. So